Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph. I'm your host, Diana Min, and we have a very special guest today, Miss Lucia Capacchione. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. Thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Yes. Lucia is an art therapist and a best-selling author of 23 books, including Recovery of Your Inner Child, The Creative Journal, and The Power of Your Other Hand. That's amazing. So for our audience that isn't familiar with you and your work, let us know who you are and what you do and who you help.
Well, I started out as an artist, and I was a pretty successful graphic artist in the 60s and 70s, and went through a divorce. I had two children, and because I had two little kids, I got interested in child development. So I became a Montessori educator, and I ran some of the first Head Start programs in Los Angeles.
Wow.
Right after the Watts riots in 1965. So a lot of what's going on today in the streets is very familiar to me.
Wow.
After a few years and a little bit while after my divorce, I went through a real traumatic breakdown. And so, the theme of turning trauma into triumph is very personal for me.
Yeah.
Because I became very ill. I wasn't able to function, and the doctors could not identify what I had. So there was no treatment. I was left in the dark. They kept giving me medicine. I was having side effects. Nothing was working.
Wow.
And one day they got my lab test mixed up with somebody else's and called me and said, "Oh, that medicine we gave you, don't take it. It belongs to somebody else."
Wow.
That's somebody else's prescription. And I was in shock. I mean, I just, that had never happened to me. I just froze and I just stood there and took that in. And then they said, come in and get your medication. And all of a sudden, I just said, no, I won't be coming back. And I hung the phone up. I went into the bathroom. I took all the medicine out of the medicine chest, took the lids off, and threw them all in the trash.
Yes.
It was just like I had this, gut reaction to this news.
Yeah.
And I went, now, what's going on at this medical clinic? It's not working for me.
Yeah.
So I've got to do something else. And I went back to bed. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that wasn't it. So I was process elimination, get rid of what isn't working. Went back to bed and sat there and looked over at the nightstand and realized this journal I had just started keeping at the onset of this illness always made me feel better. When I drew and wrote in my journal, I felt relief. I got some insights. It was just the only thing that was giving me any comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Except some friends I had a really wonderful support system. And my mother was taking care of my kids. So I have to say that I did have a support system around me. But that was the big insight. It was like, okay, it's almost like this is my medicine over here on the nightstand. Mm-hmm. So I started just really drawing and writing my feelings out. I didn't know what art therapy was, but I was doing art therapy. Kind of discovered it by accident.
Yeah.
Because the profession is very new. In those days, the American Art Therapy Association was founded in 1969. So this is 1973 now. Mm-hmm. And I never heard of art therapy. I didn't know what it was. So a friend of mine that I shared my journal with said, "Oh, you're doing art therapy. You should think about becoming an art therapist. You got the perfect background, all this child development background, and you're an artist, and you'd be perfect." And what is that? I thought it was basket weaving in mental hospitals, to be honest. I said, no, I'm not, that's not me. She said, no, it's psychotherapy using art, where you draw the unconscious out, sort of like doing dream work. And then you talk about it, and instead of talking about it, you're writing about it in your journal. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. She said, well, I'm telling you, this is art therapy that you're doing.
Yeah.
So I looked into it, and lo and behold, that was the career for me. So the illness later on spoke to me in my journal and said, the illness was about a death and rebirth. You had to let go of your old careers and your old identity, and you had to come real close to death. And I found out later that it was a life-threatening disease that I had had that has no cure in the family of lupus. I was correctly diagnosed years later. By that time, I had healed it. And so the journal told me the whole way, okay, you're going to have a career change now. And you're going to use this material and this method that you created,
Yeah.
Which is your lifesaver.
Wow. Wow. I have like chills all over my body when you said it was a death and a rebirth of your identity. And so you healed it on your own?
Absolutely no medication. After I threw all the medicine away, I didn't take any medicine for that condition at all. Wow. I did find some, and this is early on in the alternative and holistic healing field, but I was in LA, so that was kind of, one of the centers of development of alternative forms of healing. There was also a lot of Chinese medicine available, acupressure, acupuncture. I found somebody who did something called creative healing, which was a massage form based on Chinese medicine. Later found an acupuncturist. There was a lot to choose from even then. And so I did explore alternative methods, and I found a therapist who was doing a combination of Gestalt therapy and Neo-Reichian body work. And she was brilliant. She's still around as far as I know, Bond Wright, doing her thing in LA, fabulous, fabulous therapist. And she introduced me to my inner child. That was the first time I'd ever really heard of that concept. And she sat me down on the floor at the end of a session with a big pad of newsprint and some crayons. And she put a crayon, big fat kindergarten crayon, in my left hand. I'm right-handed. And I started to switch. And she said, no, I want you to use your other hand. And I want you to write, sit down on the floor and write down or print what you're going to do this week to apply what you just learned about your inner child. And I sat down and I absolutely regressed to about age 4 or 5 when I learned to write for the first time. Because I'd never written with my other hand. Actually, I did once. So that's another story I'll tell you later. But so I sat down and I regressed, and I started lisping the way as I did as a kid. I was sat in the same position I did on the floor when I was a little kid. And I wrote out that I was going to feel my feelings and know that they were okay. And that's what the whole, message from that session was, that my inner child was my feeling self and my physical self. And that I was going to accept whatever I was feeling, not judge it, and just let it be and feel it. And that changed my life. Now, she didn't know anything about what I developed later, which was this whole method of dialoguing back and forth between the two hands. And then I discovered a whole lot of other parts in me that spoke through the non-dominant hand, especially my inner wisdom.
Wow.
So I would have dialogues asking my inner wisdom to give me guidance in my life. And that was how I got through that period of time into a new career and completely healed the condition. And I was back to perfect health.
That's amazing. That is incredible.
Yeah.
I want to know what my left hand has to say too. How do we do this? How would I go about doing this?
I always tell people, start out by scribbling.
With your non-dominant hand.
Your other hand, the hand you don't normally write with.
Okay.
And when you scribble with that hand, what happens is your inner child's going to come out. First of all, that hand is connected, whether you're right or left-handed, to your right brain.
Okay.
And the right brain specializes in visual spatial perception. So artists are over there in the right brain. They have to be. Designers, architects, those kind of people. The other thing that the right brain specializes in is emotional expression. So somebody who has right brain damage might try to be saying something that has emotional content, but there won't be any emotion in their voice. Or let's say they came in the house because there was a fire and they wanted to warn you about it. Well, one of the things that's going to get you out of the house is them shouting fire. That's got emotion in it, right? So that's all you need to hear. You're up and out.
Yeah.
But if somebody had right brain damage, they would just say fire in an emotionally flat voice, and the message would not get across because the emotional part is missing.
Right.
And that's a big part of our communication with people, is the emotional backstory behind the words that we're saying.
Yeah.
And so the right brain specializes in being able to get to those feelings and to express them.
Ooh.
Yeah. And the right brain also channels our deepest, most ancient inner wisdom. It's the truth from our soul that tells us exactly where we're at and what we need to do in our lives. It's like our North Star.
Wow.
And it comes very easily through that non-dominant hand. But I always tell people, start with scribbling. Your viewers can do that right now. If they've got crayons or markers and paper, they can just start scribbling with their non-dominant hand. Okay. Not trying to make any art.
Okay.
Don't have to be an artist. You don't need talent for this. It's just scribbling like little kids do.
Yeah.
And it gets you started. Now, what happens when you start drawing and writing with your non-dominant hand, your inner critic is going to inevitably come jumping out. Oh, this is ugly. This is a waste of time. Why are you doing this? You don't have any talent.
Right.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's very uncomfortable, but you know what? It's gold. Because if you want to be a creative person, one of the absolute requirements is you have to identify and acknowledge and do battle with that critical voice inside.
Yes.
Nothing new, nothing creative ever happened without somebody passing through that rite of initiation. You've got to face your critic. It's going to come out every time and any time you push the envelope and try something new. It doesn't matter whether it has to do with the arts or not. It can have to do with buying a new house or traveling or, anything, starting a new business, whatever.
Right.
Learning a new skill, taking up skiing. I don't know. In my book, Recovery of Inner Child, I have a picture of me on a skateboard at 39. I had to do serious journaling to get down to Venice Beach with my skateboard to have fun, because my critic would come in and say, oh, what if your students from Santa Monica College in the child development department see you out here skateboarding and 9-year-old boys? They're going to think you're really nuts. And what if some of the faculty members see you down here? They are really going to know that you are crazy. And anyway, this is a waste of time. You should be home writing another book. And you're going to fall down and hurt yourself. So how could I go down there and have fun with that barrage of criticism, judgment, doomsday prophecy, negative self-talk? I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't have this method, because I would sit down and I would write it out with my dominant hand in the second person. All that stuff I just said to you, I'd write it all out.
Oh, okay.
With my dominant hand. And then with my non-dominant hand, with a big crayon or a big fat marker, I'd let my inner brat come out and say, shut up. F you. Get out. I'm sick of you. I'm going to the beach and I'm going to have fun. I'm not listening to this stuff. Yeah. Just shut up. I had to do that to get the motivation to actually break through that block and get down there and have fun.
Yeah, that's incredible. So this is the first time I'm ever hearing about this, as I'm sure most of our audience too is the first time. So when I'm scribbling with my left hand, okay, let's say I'm trying to overcome this fear about trying something new, like you are with the skateboard, right? So I'm writing all the stuff that my inner critic is saying with my right hand down, right? So I'm getting it out.
And you've got to say it with this in the second person, because if you use the word I, you're cooked, because you identified with the critic and you think that's you talking. The critic is not you. It's a subpersonality that got hypnotized and programmed by people outside.
Huh.
And we want to deprogram that.
Right.
And as a coach, you know that problem. When people have old programs about who they are and who they should be and what they should do, you can't shake them loose into the new them unless you can get past whatever old beliefs they're carrying around. Right. And that critic is carrying those old beliefs.
Right. It's definitely reprogramming the subconscious mind, but I love that you said that you separated it, right? Because you saying it's not you, right? So I'm writing it like, you're stupid, you're dumb. No, like that, right? You're stupid, you're dumb. Okay, so I'm not stupid, I'm not dumb, right? You're stupid, you're dumb.
Exactly.
You're not good enough, right? Okay, so we're writing this with the right hand. So in the left hand, are we still scribbling? Or are we writing sentences now?
We're gonna then answer back and say, shut up.
We're gonna write with our left hand, say
get out of here. 4-letter words are fine. Nothing bad's gonna happen. You can just be as mean and and rebellious as you want. This is your inner brat talking.
Yeah.
And the inner brat, see, most people have disowned their inner brat, especially women. We're not supposed to be bratty. We're called bitchy if we're bratty. Well, that's where our power is. If we know how to use that bitch and brat power, we become dynamos. But if it's working against us, we're sunk. We'll get depressed. We'll be dissatisfied, frustrated. We will not reach our goals because we're having that critic in there saying you can't reach your goal. It's not going to happen. Forget it, right? And you've got to get bratty with it. You've got to fight fire with fire because that critic is monstrous.
Yeah.
It will block you. I did that when I wrote my first book, The Creative Journal. I actually did a journal page. I have it here in the book. Oh. And I had a paralyzing writer's block. I decided to write a book based on the classes I was teaching after I became an art therapist. My students kept saying, write a book, write a book. All right, okay. So I'll write a book. So I started working on this book, and I ended up sitting in those days at the typewriter, frozen and looking at white paper and not writing anything. I'd scribble a few notes here and there, but I wasn't writing anything. And then I realized, I better go practice what I'm preaching over there in that class and battle it out because I know what's causing this. It's the critic. Yeah. So I went up into my room, I got my journal out, and I just sat down and I did this journal page right here.
Oh, you put it in the book. Awesome. Get lost, will ya?
And what the critic is saying is, you're no author. You can't write. Look at the stuff you've written. I had a bunch of notes, right? It's a mess, unclear, dry, garbled. You're wasting your time. No publisher is ever going to accept this.
Wow.
All right. Now, those are all lies, by the way.
Right.
I was always a very good author. Now, it says you're no author. But here's the thing. You read that word and you go, author is somebody who's published a book, right? No, author is somebody who sits down and writes every day.
Right.
That's how you write a book. You do what an author does. And I was doing that. I was showing up. I had a writing schedule. I was showing up. I was writing notes. I was doing research. I was collecting journal prompts for my classes. But I hadn't written the book yet. So now my critic is trying to make me think I'm not an author because I don't have a published book yet. And I'm not going to be able to do it. And that line about you can't write, that's a lie. I got all A's in English. My teachers all said I should become a writer. Growing up, truly.
Yeah.
I became an artist instead. But they all said, you should become a writer. You're a natural. You do it so easily, blah, blah, blah. And it was one of my best classes. Anything to do with writing, English, you name it. Yeah. So all of this is lies. That's what we have to understand. Yeah. And I have another exercise in another book that I'll tell you about in a minute, where you do sentence for sentence and you just put that critic on the stand. And through every line, you put the truth over in the right-hand column.
Wow.
That's really, really empowering. But anyway, what I did then was I answered back, as you saw, I'm going to do it anyway in spite of you. You see, I am doing it. I haven't let you get me. You're the one who is wasting your time. Get lost, will you? Well, all it took was 2 pages, right? Just 2 pages like that in an 8.5 by 11 journal. I went right back to the typewriter. I sat down, I started writing, the words flowed out. I finished that book in 3 months. And I was only working 2 or 3 days a week because I had 2 kids, a single parent. I was working full time. Yeah. And I had to take a couple of days out a week to write. So it wasn't, that I had all this time and money to do it.
Yeah.
I had to fit it in, but I put it in my schedule. And within 3 months, I had that book done. A friend of mine helped me find his publisher. And we signed a contract by the end of that year. I was doing that from January to March or April. Finished it, in the summer. And by the end of the year, I had a contract with a publisher.
Wow. So,
see, those were all lies. No publisher's going to ever accept this. Right. Blah, blah, blah. No, publisher accepted it right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have to see them for what they are. It's a hypnotic trance. It's a program. It came in from outside. It needs to go back outside.
Wow.
So you want to hold it at arm's length. And that's why you always use the word you. Yeah.
So it's like we're pulling it from inside, right? Where we believe it's part of us. We're taking it, we're pulling it out,
Yeah,
right? We're
putting it
putting
out
it
there.
on a place where you can see it, and
That's
we
right.
begin to physically dismantle it, right?
That's
And
right.
energetically disconnect from it.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. Beautifully. And it's in the left brain.
Right.
And you can only battle it out from the right brain. Because if you try to battle this out in the left brain, it doesn't work. You just keep going round and round in circles.
Mm-hmm.
More judgment comes up, more criticism,
Yeah.
more reasons why you can't do it. It doesn't work. So that's why getting over into the right brain with the non-dominant hand, whether you're right or left-handed, doesn't matter. It's the non-dominant hand, because the dominant hand got hardwired to the language centers of the left brain and to the logic.
Okay.
And the critic is pseudo-logical. It speaks in perfect sentences, sounds logical, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's lies.
Yeah.
So it's very tricky.
Yeah. Would it be considered the ego or no?
Well, the ego is a tricky word. In my system, I use the term aware ego for the decision maker or the director of the movie.
Uh-huh.
That's in our frontal cortex.
Okay.
It's not right or left. It
Okay.
draws from both. But the ego decision maker is the one, but it has to be aware. An unaware ego is a problematic
Gotcha.
thing. But an aware ego goes, oh, just like I did. Oh, I've got a writer's block. Oh, I'm paralyzed at the typewriter. Oh, I know what causes that. It's that critic. I'm going to go deal with that now. I'm not going to try to sit here and write.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to work. I got to go deal with the cause of this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go take a drink. I'm not going to take drugs. Because, see, I lived in Hollywood for years. I was raised in the movie industry. And I worked with a lot of people in the movie industry and entertainment. And, of course, a lot of them, when they get blocked, they just turn to drugs or some kind of addiction.
Yeah.
Because it's too uncomfortable. They don't want to deal with this dragon, this critic.
Right.
But it's like all the fairy tales. In every fairy tale, practically, there's a little kid dealing with a witch or a dragon or a monster. Well, that's psychologically very accurate. And children respond to that. So do adults, because we know it's true.
Right.
We've all got that going on. And it's always the inner child that's being besieged and, pounced on by some critical monster. And that's always critical, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always telling the kid's no good.
Right.
And so that is really the way our psyche is constructed. It's this inner family. And my whole method of therapy is called inner child reparenting. And I work with an inner family model. And the creativity comes from the inner child.
Yeah.
When I do 12 sessions with clients, a lot of times they end up becoming artists, musicians, actors, you name it. Because once they find their inner child, they're off to the races. I mean, they come alive. They really do. If they were an art collector, now they're going to become an artist.
Yeah.
They're not going to just look at art anymore. Their inner child wants to paint and do sculpture and draw and, do whatever, because it's been tapped into by this method through the right brain.
Yeah. So essentially we all have these creative talents, these, whatever it is that comes from our inner child, not to, be an artist or an actor, but whatever it is, right? Whatever you're looking to create, we're creators.
Absolutely.
And, as we go through life, other people's their limitations or their set of beliefs or, their fears, right? We absorb that and it stifles our innate ability to create.
Absolutely. Other people's definitions of us are really lethal.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And even positive, like sometimes a parent who didn't become a dancer and pushes their kid to become a dancer, that's lethal too. Yeah. Because that's a part of the critic that I call the pusher. Mm-hmm. It wants perfection and it's going to drive you to your death or to drink until you do what it wants you to do. And it's saying the whole time, I'm doing this for your own good. You have talent in music and you need to be a musician and we're giving you music lessons and you damn well better perform. Yeah. And that's usually coming from a parent who either didn't succeed in music or wanted to do music and didn't. So they project that onto their child, and they turn the child into a little robot. Yeah, it's like the child's desires don't figure into it. It's like, no, the parent has decided this is it. And I get a lot of clients whose parents decided their career for them, and they're miserable. Their doctors send them to me because they have all these psychosomatic illnesses and nothing's working. Like with me, when I was sick, the medicine isn't going to work for that. Your soul is sick when you're not following your inner child and your inner self. And there is no cure for that except creativity.
So true. So
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I'm learning so much right now. It's like I knew it, but the way that you are framing it is just like so good. It's so good. So what if someone is dealing with like being a perfectionist, right? So being a perfectionist and like not being able to show up or you know, allow their inner child to just play freely, right? Because how would we approach something like that?
Well, exactly the same way. A perfectionist, there's a perfectionist subpersonality that hangs out with the critic. So you've got the critic, the perfectionist, and the pusher. The critic just criticizes everything, generally. The perfectionist wants perfection. So my perfectionist, one day I'm doing a workshop, picks up my book, my first book, and notices that my name is misspelled in the third paragraph, and has a fit right there at the workshop.
Oh, wow.
And just like turns me into this frozen, paralyzed creature. It's like, oh my God, there's a misspelled word. And the book's been out for 3 years. Oh, and I never saw it. I must be really stupid. I mean, my perfectionist went crazy over that, right? Yeah. So when any one or all three or two of those is on your case, and you are in trouble, because like the perfectionist and the pusher might get together. It's got to be perfect, and you know what? It's got to be fast and right now. You know, you missed the deadline. Forget it. You're hopeless. Never going to happen. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I've added to that exercise, because this is very great for the perfectionist, write down what it says and then answer back. Let your inner brat just come in and tell it off.
Yeah.
But one of my other favorite exercises is I have a couple of draw it yourself coloring books.
Oh, I love it.
And these are workbooks with no lines to color in, just journal prompts for drawing and writing, and then lots of paper.
That's great.
And I have one in here that I love. It's called, the section is called The Inner Bully Turned Outward. Okay. And so that shows you how you got to get it out on paper. So what I do is I take a piece of paper, I divide it in half.
Yeah.
And then on the left side, I write down with the dominant hand. This is all with the dominant hand, by the way.
Yeah.
I write down the inner bully says. What does it say? And in this, you're not smart enough to start a successful business. You never trained in retail sales. You'll fail.
Yeah.
This is when I started a gallery in Cambria here in 2009, in the middle of a recession. And I had the opportunity, the space opened up, and I got a bunch of other artists together. We created a co-op.
Yeah.
Now, logically, that was not the time to start a new business, but we did. We stayed in business for almost 10 years.
Wow.
We had a lot of fun. A lot of different artists came in and out of there. I stayed the whole time. And then when it was time for me to leave, the rent got raised and we all left. Yeah. But we had a blast. We had parties there. We had slideshows and, you know, PowerPoint presentations about artists. And we turned it into like this little community center.
Oh,
it was fabulous. But when I opened it, my critic was driving me crazy because it said, you've never had a retail store and you don't know what you're doing and you're going to fail.
Yeah.
And anyway, you should be writing books because that's your real career. This is not real. Forget this. This is silly. And I did it anyway. So here's what I wrote for the real truth. And I wrote it with my dominant hand because this is where your left brain comes in very handy. It can sit there and analyze that. It's like an attorney in court. It puts the critic on the stand, the bully, and it says, what did you say? And the bully says its thing. And then you come in and you say, no, that's not true. So I wrote, I've achieved all my major goals in life. So there's no reason to believe I won't succeed at this. My heart's in it, and I work hard, and I'm getting the help that I need. Period. That's it.
Love it.
And that broke me right through that block. Had no more confusion or doubts about it. It's like I've got the right artists, friends of mine. I love their work. They're excited. We're going to do this. There were 4 of us.
Yeah.
And then we brought in a lot of other artists along the way. And we did a lot of talent scouting, and we developed young talent. We brought people in who were very insecure about their talent. And we said, there's a wall. Put your art up there. We'll show you how to market it. You got to spend some time in the gallery because you got to learn how to deal with the public.
Yeah.
And we'll teach you how to do it. And they did some wonderful work, and they sold their art.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a little school as well as a gallery. Yeah, it was really fun.
Oh,
exactly.
That's
so we use the dominant hand for that exercise because now we want to be very precise in ferreting out these lies. Because people believe what the critic is saying. That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this exercise, we're using the dominant hand because
for
we're
both sides. Yeah.
Right. So it's like the bully says this, and this is us.
This is the truth.
This is the truth of.
And you got to stop and really think about it. You got to be an attorney in court.
Yeah. You
got this character on the stand. Wait. What are you saying about me? What are you saying about my client here? No, that's not true.
Yeah. I love it. I'm going to implement this. I'm going to share it with my clients. I mean, I think we all, no matter, what you do, you're always going to come up against yourself sometimes, and no matter how many things, like you said, you had achieved so many things at that point, yet it still comes up. And it's just, and what I was talking about with is like fear. It's like, fear never leaves. We just get more comfortable with it, right? We're able to face it better. And now that you're putting like a personification to the fear, right? It's a bully, it's a critic, it's this little thing.
Well, the fear is the inner child.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, because our inner child is our emotional self. So whenever we're feeling fearful, like I was when I was writing that book and I was paralyzed, the most extreme case of fear is paralysis. You are so scared you can't move. You can't work. You can't do what it is you want to do.
Right.
So when that happens, whether it's with a client or in my own life, I know, there's a bully running around here somewhere. Let's find it. Okay. Because that's what's causing the fear. Why would a child ever feel fearful unless something terrible was going to happen or somebody telling them something terrible was going to happen? That's what makes children scared. Unless it's a real thing like, a car coming too close in the street or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about emotional stuff between people. Kids get scared when other people bully them or criticize them. They start shriveling up.
Yeah.
And what we need to do is bring that natural creative child back, that spirit of the child, with all of its feelings and all of its senses. And that's why in trauma work, somatic therapy is so essential. You cannot do trauma healing unless you're working with the body. Yeah. So that's why in this book I have people actually drawing an outline of the body and coloring in the areas that are in pain and then dialoguing with it using both hands. The body talks with the non-dominant hand because the child is in the body. So if the child is feeling a headache, it'll write about it. And I have 4 basic questions that the dominant hand asks. What are you? What body part? How do you feel? Why do you feel this way? And what can I do to help you? And the child usually says, I'm really nervous and scared. Well, why? Because that critic is telling me that I'm going to fail. Yeah. And every time I think about doing this new project, I get terrified. And then I go do something else and I get distracted and I do the laundry and I think I have to do my emails. And, that's the classic, except for addictions, the classic escape route from a critic is, we'll go do something else. Yeah. Yeah. Go watch television. Go do something else.
Right.
This is too uncomfortable. You don't want to hear this voice. So you don't want to deal with it. So, but you got to face it. You have to bring it from the unconscious back and right in front of you. Look it in the face. All right, what do you got to say? Write it down.
Say it to
And
my face.
then, yeah, and then let your gut really feel, how does it feel to have somebody stand there and tell you that you're stupid, you're not a good business person, you're going to fail, this is a big mistake, blah, blah, blah. How does that really feel? And in my workshops, I tell people, imagine somebody standing in front of you saying that. How would you feel? What would you do? And most people say, well, I would tell them to shut up.
Yeah.
I would tell them they don't know what they're talking about. And I go, good. Tell that to your inner critic. Because that's the real critic. That's the one you got to deal with.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. This is really powerful.
Yeah. It really works.
It's a message we all need. It's what we all need to implement, you know, just to come back to what we were meant to do in this world. You know, how many people out there are not living in alignment with what they would like to do or what they want to do because of all of this inner critic, inner bully just standing in their way. We can just knock them all down. We can be free to express ourselves, and oh man, so much.
Do it from our unique core, from who we are. That's
Right.
unique. I worked at Walt Disney Imagineering. And I didn't know Walt personally, but I heard lots of stories from people who worked with him.
Yeah.
And I worked for Charles Eames, the famous furniture designer.
Wow.
I've worked with some really amazing talent. And they all had an incredible inner child. And they all did things very uniquely. When Walt wanted to do Disneyland, he couldn't get any money for it. The banks thought he was crazy. Yeah, they did. You're not you're in the television and movie business. What I don't know what you're talking about. Amusement parks.
Yeah.
They were thinking of the old model, and he couldn't get the money. So he did something brilliant. And this was he and his brother working together. His brother Roy, who was the business guy. They decided to make it a commercial. So they got Carnation and all these different companies to build pavilions and rides and put the money up. Because that's what they did with their television shows. They had commercials. That's what bankrolled their TV stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So they go, well, let's use that business model for this theme park thing that we're going to do. And that's how they built Disneyland. That's brilliant. Now, the banks were not brilliant. The banks were stupid. They lost out. They would have made a lot of money if they'd invested in Disneyland.
Yeah.
Truly. But Dow Chemical, Delta Airlines, all these companies, Carnation, they said, oh, yeah, of course, Disney. Oh, yeah, we get our name all over it? Oh, good. Okay, sure. Look at the films that are being advertised there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Star Wars, Indiana Jones ride. I mean, all that's Indiana Jones was developed while I was working there as a consultant to artists. And the girl that designed that was a visual artist. She wasn't a theme park designer. We were doing personal presentation classes so that they could present to investors. Because most of these artists are introverts. They don't know about personal presentation and marketing.
Right.
They're terrified. So we taught them how to do that. And we gave them an assignment. And she came in with camouflage clothes and a pith helmet and this incredible artwork she did. And it was the Indiana Jones ride, which didn't exist.
Yeah.
And when she was all through presenting, my co-leader, who was the famous vocal coach, and I said, when is it opening? We want to take our kids and our grandkids. She said, it's imaginary. You said make up a ride and do a presentation. So I did. And the woman who brought us in there said, Nina, come here. We've got to go talk to so-and-so. This has to be a ride.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Right.
But she was in a situation where she was terrified. Terrified to be speaking to these big money people who are going to invest in these attractions.
Yeah.
As an artist, because attractions there tell stories. And the person who designs it has to be able to tell a story to interest somebody to put some big money in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we taught marketing to the artists. Wow. And we used to bring some of the business people in and do this stuff with them to get them creative.
Oh, wow.
So they could open up their right brains. The right brain people, the artists, they were fine in the right brain. They needed to develop their right brain. I mean, their left brain. They needed to understand building codes and why you couldn't do this because of building and safety and for financial reasons. They need to understand that.
Yeah.
Because you don't learn that in art school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you need both.
And the business people needed to be creative the way Roy and Walt were. They were great role models for creative business.
Yeah.
An artist and a business guy together.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't be too far on one end of the spectrum. You do need both in order to create.
Right. And this is so important for women because a lot of women get stuck with that critic. And they let it hold them back, and they let other people's definitions of who they are and how they should behave run their lives. And it's tragic because there's so much talent out there and so many creative ideas. And when women get into business for themselves, you can't stop them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're amazing in business for themselves. My attitude was always forget the glass ceiling, build your own ceiling.
Right. Build your own building.
Every big company I ever worked for, Mattel, I designed toys for them, Disney, they all wanted to hire me for full-time jobs. I turned them down because I knew there was a glass ceiling there. And I said, why do that? I am an entrepreneur. I'm self-employed, and I'm going to do my own thing. And so very rarely have I worked in a job for anybody. And women are really good at this. We know because we have to be multitaskers. It's part of our makeup. Our brains are designed a little differently. Women have the ability to work in both sides of the brain back and forth much more easily. There's a lot of research on this. And so we can multitask. We have to. If you've ever raised children, you know that if you can't multitask, you and those kids are done. You're finished. You've got to be able to do 5 things at the same time. Yeah. And that is a real asset when you're going to be in business for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed.
That's like glass ceiling. Just create your own. Forget the ceiling.
Yes. Lucia, oh my God, I've learned so much today, and I'm sure our audience has as well. How can our audience, whoever's listening, get deeper into your work, get connected with you, and just get into...
I have a couple of suggestions. I have a website, Lucias, LUCIAC.com. And people who are, in the summit who want a gift, I'm giving away a book called The Inner Child Playbook. And it is the set of exercises that appear in my best-selling book, The Creative Journal. And it can be printed out. This is the original book, but the playbook is just it's an ebook that you can download. You have to put the name of this summit in the gift page link, and which you're going to give them. And they can work with this inner child stuff through these activities in that workbook. I also recommend that they go to my blog, thepowerofyourotherhand.blogspot.com.
Love it.
And that has the most delicious blogs by all these people who have either worked with me, read my books. Some of them have become professional artists. Some of them already were, and they totally changed their style once they used my method. Mm-hmm. So there's all these nice short blogs to read about all these different people's applications of my method. And then I have a YouTube channel. It's just my name, Lucia Capacchione at YouTube. And on the YouTube channel, I actually demonstrate some of these activities, scribbling, writing with the other hand. I show pages from my journal and talk about dealing with COVID. You see, I think COVID, there's a gift side of COVID.
Right.
I had a vision one morning that Mother Earth Gaia was standing over my bed, gigantic female figure. And she said, all right, all of you, go to your rooms and stay time out. And don't come out until you can play fair and respect each other and respect the earth. That's it. Just stay there.
Yeah. And
I woke up like, what was that? And then I realized, oh, what an incredible opportunity this is for people to go inside themselves. They're going to be home. Just like I was bedridden when I was sick. It wasn't COVID. It was a virus, but I was in bed for 3 months in that summer. And I discovered this work. And the journaling is what took me there. So it's a great opportunity, if people will take it, to really go inside and find, okay, what's your true heart's desire?
Yeah.
You know, what do you really want to do? I do coaching with this book of mine where people make collages.
Oh.
And then they dialogue with the images in the collages, and the non-dominant hand writes for the images.
Wow.
So the whole point is to sit and say, what is my heart's desire? Make a collage that illustrates that. Not a collage of things, but of the experiences you want, the states of being you want.
Yeah.
And then dialogue with those images. And it just automatically happens because you create an inner magnet. And the world will send you the opportunities if you go deeply enough inside.
I'm going to do that with my vision board. I have a vision board.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that. Yeah. I'm going to do that. That's like such an awesome idea, to just dialogue with the images. So when I'm doing this with my left hand and I'm looking at my vision board, right, I'm writing from
your dominant hand interviews the image. So let's say here's a heart.
I'm getting so much good stuff right now.
So I would say, well, heart, would you speak to me? What's your message? Why are you in this collage? Okay. And the heart might say, I'm here to remind you that you need to follow your true heart's desire. And all these pictures are reminding you of what that heart's desire is, and don't forget it. And keep looking at it.
Okay.
And it might say, and if that critic comes in, you need to sit down and tell it to shut up, because the critic does not get to have an opinion about this collage. And you have to tell that critic that. So this heart has already told me a whole bunch. And when I put the heart there, I may not have been thinking about that at all. I just liked the picture and I put it in. But when I let it speak, a whole bunch of other layers of meaning come out. Then it becomes almost like therapy. It's your own personal therapy.
Yeah.
Because you get insights about yourself, what you really want, how it's going to happen. You know, it's really fun. I manifested the house I'm sitting in that way. I did a collage. My critic said, this is insane. You don't have the money for this. Your father's dying of cancer. You've got work at Disney, blah, blah, blah. You can't move to Cambria and have a house there. Forget it. And I just kept doing the collage anyway. And 9 months later, I was up here working on a book project, and I found this house. And by that time, the market had plunged and the price was down. I think it was about $100,000 less than the original asking price.
Wow.
So I bought it, I moved in. And interestingly enough, this is really important for people to know. When I made the collage, I didn't have the money. But my father died a few months later and left me enough money to the penny for the down payment of this house.
Wow.
So at the time, it might have been technically true,
right?
But things change.
Absolutely.
And things evolve, and opportunities come that you can't predict. You cannot predict. So you've got to be open to possibilities.
Absolutely. I always say there are people you haven't met yet that will change your life. There are opportunities that are coming that will change your life. And when we try to look at our current reality and base our future off the current reality, when we don't know what's coming. So that's an amazing example of that. You have lived an amazing life. I'm so grateful to be connected with you. I'm so grateful to have learned so much from this interview. I'm like,
I love sharing this because I know it works, and when people do it, the feedback is so phenomenal. And that's why I love the blog, because people are telling their stories. I was going to write a book called The Miracles Book with all the miracles I've heard from this work. And then when I did the most recent edition of The Power of Your Other Hand, my editor said, well, you need to have a blog for the book. And then I thought, that's it. Forget about another book. I'm just going to keep collecting all those stories. People are going to post them. Anybody can read them. Anybody can post their own story. And it's been great fun to see all that. You know, incredible stories there. Amazing stuff.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, for you guys watching, you will be able to get in contact with Lucia, and all of her work, all of her corresponding links will be attached to the email that you got this interview in, as well as on the page that this video is hosted on. Lucia, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your work, your heart. And thank you guys for watching another episode of Transforming Trauma to Triumph, and we'll catch you on the next one.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.